يا من هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الرحمن الرحيم الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر الخالق البارئ المصور الغفار
من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Welcome to the Electric Mosque's presentation of the teachings of Islam. I'm your brother, Hajji Dr. Roshan Khan. My friends and my brothers, today we are doing a special presentation. We have in two parts. I am not the presenter, but I thought it necessary to take a rest from the ones in the series that I've been giving you over and over. I think we have finished so far part 5 or part in two parts. Part 5 was. So technically part 6. Anyhow, we're going to part 6 very soon. But today I chose a 15 minutes presentation and a commentary in which the Russian bishop, official bishop of Russia, is indicating that Islam, that Muslims own the future. And he is giving you the reasons why. Now, if you are Muslims and non-Muslims, I just ask you to listen very keenly and beautifully to what the gentleman is saying. I am just putting this out because I think it is important. Secondly, I'm going to do a very beautiful recital taken from a famous reciter of Islam, of Ar-Rahman. That's part 2 of this presentation. Ar-Rahman, the beneficent, the magnificence of God, the bounties of God. Which of the bounties of Allah or God Almighty can you deny? And every time He gives you the wisdom and the knowledge, can you deny it? And can someone else create it? The bounties. So basically that's it. Dearest beloved divine brothers and sisters, your friend, your brother, now transferring you over to the technician, to the Russian bishop.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother and sister, welcome back to Islamic Notes channel. Pastor, Islam, the true religion. Dmitry Smirnov, who is an Orthodox Catholic high priest, delivered a very moving church sermon in front of hundreds of his congregation. In the sermon, he said the future of Russia will belong to Muslims. Here is the sermon delivered by Dmitry Smirnov. You see, when Muslims celebrate their big religious day, not a single person dares to pass them by, because all over the world, in mosques and city streets are filled with millions and thousands of Muslims who is bowing down to his Lord. Witness the line of people who worship in a very orderly manner, and that does not need to be taught. They line up in order without having to be ordered. Then where can you see the followers of Christianity can worship together? And that is not in Christianity. You will never see it. Muslims often help without expecting anything in return. You ask the old woman who, according to the old woman, a Muslim driver often generously provided transportation to take her to this church in Moscow. And every time the old woman wanted to give him wages, but the Muslim driver refused on the grounds that Islam forbids taking wages from elderly women, the poor and orphans in various homes and foundations. Listen to his confession in the case of the old woman not being his mother or relative, but the Muslim driver said that in Islam, it is obligatory to respect the elderly. What more, the elderly are weak and helpless like that. The personal sincerity of the Muslim driver is nowhere to be found among Christians who preach love, but any Christian driver can mercilessly still ask for a wage for his service of transporting the old woman. He said he deserves a wage because that is his profession as a taxi driver. A Muslim is closer to the Messiah, but a Christian only wants money. Do you not realize it? how in the process of atonement anyone must pay to the priest, whether the person is poor or rich, must put his dowry as a ritual of forgiveness of sins. Meanwhile, a Muslim is not even interested in taking wages from elderly people. They were so sincere and voluntarily brought goods and expenses for the old woman. Even when the old woman was going to pray at the church, the Muslim driver faithfully sent and picked up the old woman. This is the reason why I dare to say that the future of Russia will belong to the majority of Muslims, and this country will belong to all Muslims. You just look at a person who is virtuous and polite, capable of making the world astounded, where it turns out that the morals of Muslims are more noble than those of the Christian congregation. You have certainly heard that Islam can be accused of being a terrorist religion, but that is just a mere issue that in reality, Muslims are more exposed to their karma and decency. Even though they are slandered as terrorists, the number of converts in Europe and Russia is increasing as more and more people go to Muslim places of worship to convert to Islam. This is because the converts know the truth that Islam is not as cruel as the world accuses. Now and forever, the future of Russia will belong to the Muslims. In the future, this is the era of the return of Islamic success. Just look at the population of Muslims in Russia. It has totaled 23 million, while Christians have decreased to 18 million, while the rest still remain communist. It is a clear fact that Islam is now the largest religion in Russia. In the north, the former breakaway states of the Soviet Union, where the majority are Muslim, namely the Chechen Republic, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Dagestan. While Muslims have filled the big cities of Russia, including Moscow, the priest ended his sermon while going down to his pulpit with watery eyes, where his congregation were still glued and full of emotion, not expecting a Catholic priest to glorify Muslims. Some of the pilgrims cried when they saw how the teaching of Islam was virtuous and not at all worthy of being branded as terrorist. Although it was delivered by a non-Muslim, it proved that what was taught in Islam was about noble morals, mutual love, and tolerance. This also proves that what people who consider Muslims as terrorists is not true at all. Orthodox Archbishop, Russia's future in Islamic hands. Dmitry Smirnov, Orthodox Christian Archbishop of Russia, said that the future of Russia is in the hands of Muslims. When Muslims commemorate the Eid holiday, no one dares to enter their area because hundreds of thousands of people are bowing down and worshiping their God, said Smirnov in front of thousands of Orthodox Catholic Church members, as quoted by the World Bulletin on September 10, 2014. Where can you see Russian Orthodox worshippers together? There won't be, said Smirnov. According to Smirnov, Muslims often offer help without expecting anything in return, while the Russian Orthodox believers are on the contrary. Ask this old woman how she was helped by a Muslim driver, said Smirnov, pointing to a woman present in the church. According to the woman, a Muslim driver who drives public transport in Moscow never asks an old woman for a fare. The Muslim drivers refused, saying that a child would not take money from a mother who would worship, said Smirnov. While Christians say driver is my job, a Muslim said Smirnov brings us closer to the Messiah. While Christians only want money. The congregation present in the church room was silent. Smirnov continued. A Muslim will not be interested in taking advantage of an old woman who needs help. They are ready to bring her things when she is in the market, apartment, and other places. This is the reason why I say the future of Russia is in the hands of the Muslims. The future belongs to them, Smirnov concluded. Islam is growing in Russia. It is estimated that Islam has become the second largest religion in Russia, with a total population of 23 million people. They are concentrated in the northern part of the Caucasus, the Czech Republic, Ingushetia, and Dagestan. Russian Orthodox priest, Islam the religion of the future in Russia. Russian Orthodox Catholic Archpriest Dmitry Smirnov shocked his people in Russia in mid-September. In his sermon attended by thousands of his congregation, he said that the future of Russia belongs to Muslims. Witness, the rows of millions of people who worship very orderly and follow their respective rows, and there is no need to teach them. They line up orderly without having to be ordered. Then where do you see Christians all over the world can worship together, and that does not exist in Christianity? You will never see it, said the Orthodox Catholic Grand Imam in front of hundreds of thousands of his congregation, as quoted by the World Bulletin News Russia. Look at them. Muslims often help voluntarily without expecting anything in return, but Christians do the opposite. You ask the old woman, pointing to the paralyzed woman in her church. According to the old woman, a Muslim driver often provides his transportation services to take her to church in Moscow. And every time the old woman wants to give her a fee, the Muslim driver always refuses on the grounds that Islam forbids taking wages from elderly women, the elderly, the poor, and orphans in various shelters and foundations. Listen to his testimony, even though the old woman is not his mother or relative. But the Muslim driver said that in Islam it is obligatory to respect older people, especially if the elderly are weak and helpless. The sincerity of the Muslim driver's personality is not found in Christians who teach love, but the Christian driver could mercilessly ask for payment for his transportation services to the old woman. He said he deserved to be paid because it was his profession as a transportation service. A Muslim is actually closer to the Messiah, but Christians only want money. Don't you feel it? How in the process of atonement, everyone must pay your priest, whether they are poor or elderly. They are required to give it as a ritual for the forgiveness of sins. Hundreds of congregation members who attended the high priest mass were silent and thoughtful. Witness also a Muslim who was not interested in taking payment from elderly people. They were so sincere in volunteering to carry the old woman's belongings and shopping until the old woman wanted to pray at church. The Muslim driver faithfully took the old woman to and from the church. This is why I say that the future of Russia will be a Muslim majority, and this country will belong to Islam. You see, a person who is virtuous and polite is able to amaze the world. It turns out that Muslim morals are nobler than Christian congregations. You hear that Islam is accused of being a terrorist religion, but that is just an issue. In fact, Muslims prioritize manners and politeness. Although they are slandered as terrorists, but the population of converts in Europe and Russia is increasing in coming to Muslim places of worship to embrace Islam because the converts know very well that Islam is not as cruel as the world accuses. The Grand Imam continued that now and forever the future of Russia will belong to Muslims by referring to the Muslim population in Russia, which has reached 23 million. Meanwhile, Christians have decreased to 18 million, while the rest still adhere to communism. It is a fact that Islam is now the largest religion in Russia. The Grand Imam ended his sermon and went down to his pulpit with teary eyes, and his congregation was still stunned and moved. They did not expect a Catholic high priest to glorify Muslims. Some of the congregation cried, seeing how Islamic teachings turned out to be noble and not worthy of being called terrorists. Dmitry Smirnov, Russian pastor who admires Islam. Orderliness in worship, sacrifice, and the nobility of the morals of Muslims turned out to be a special concern for the archpriest of the Russian Orthodox Catholics, Dmitry Smirnov. He delivered a very sensational church sermon in front of hundreds of his congregation. He asked the Orthodox Catholic congregation to learn from Muslims whose numbers continue to grow over time and are predicted to become the largest religion in Russia. Look, when Muslims celebrate their religious holidays, no one dares to pass by them, because all over the world, mosques and city streets are filled with thousands of Muslims who are prostrating themselves to their Lord. Witness, millions of people worship very orderly and tidy up the rows without needing to be organized. They line up orderly without having to be ordered. So where can you see Christians all over the world worshiping together? You will never see it because it is not found in Christianity today. Look, Muslims often help willingly without expecting anything in return, but Christians do the opposite. Ask the old woman, pointing to the paralyzed woman in the church. According to the old woman, a Muslim driver often provides his transportation services to take her to church in Moscow. And every time the old woman wants to give her a fee, the Muslim driver always refuses on the grounds that Islam forbids taking wages from elderly women, the decrepit, the poor, and orphans. Listen to her testimony, even though the old woman was not her mother or relative. The Muslim driver said that in Islam it is obligatory to respect older people, especially elderly people who are weak and helpless. The sincerity of the Muslim driver's personality is not found in Christians who teach love, but the Christian driver can mercilessly ask for wages for his transportation services to the old woman. He said he deserved wages because it was his profession as his transportation service. A Muslim is closer to the Messiah, but a Christian only wants money. Don't you feel it? How in the process of atonement, everyone must pay to your priest whether they are poor or elderly. They are required to pay a dowry as a ritual for the forgiveness of sins. Witness also, a Muslim is not interested in taking wages from the elderly. They are so sincere in volunteering to carry the old woman's things and shopping. Until the old woman wants to pray at the church, the Muslim driver faithfully picks up and drops off the old woman. This is why I say, the future of Russia will belong to the Muslim majority, and this country will belong to Islam. You see a person who is virtuous and polite, able to amaze the world. It turns out that the morals of Muslims are nobler than those of Christians. You hear that Islam is accused of being a terrorist religion, but that is just an issue. In reality, Muslims prioritize manners and politeness. Even though they are slandered as terrorists, the population of converts in Europe and Russia is increasing in number, coming to Muslim places of worship to embrace Islam, because the converts know very well that Islam is not as cruel as the world accuses them of. Now and forever, the future of Russia will belong to Muslims. In the future is the return of the glory of Islam. Look at the Muslim population in Russia. It has reached 23 million, and Christians have decreased to 18 million, then the rest are still communist. It is a fact that Islam is now the largest religion in Russia. In the north of the former Soviet Union, the majority Muslim republics are the Chechen Republic, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Dagestan. Then Muslims have reached the big cities of Russia, including Moscow. When he ended the sermon, Dmitry Smirnov's eyes were filled with tears. Meanwhile, some of his congregation could not hold back their tears. Some of them may have felt that they had misjudged Muslims. Others may have felt that the wave of Islam in Russia could no longer be held back. But what is certain is that the sermon that has been circulating for several years shows how the noble morals of Muslims make non-Muslims amazed and respectful.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان رب المشرقين ورب المغربين فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يخرج منهما اللؤلؤ والمرجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان وله الجوار المنشآت في البحر كالأعلام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يسأله من في السماوات والأرض كل يوم هو في شأن فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان سنفرغ لكم أيها الثقلان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يا معشر الجن والإنس إن استطعتم أن تنفذوا من أقطار السماوات والأرض فانفذوا لا تنفذون إلا بسلطان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يرسل عليكما شواظ من نار ونحاس فلا تنتصران فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فإذا انشقت السماء فكانت وردة كالدهان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيومئذ لا يسأل عن ذنبه إنس ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يعرف المجرمون بسيماهم فيؤخذ بالنواصي والأقدام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان هذه جهنم التي يكذب بها المجرمون يطوفون بينها وبين حميم آن فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان ولمن خاف مقام ربه جنتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان ذواتا أفنان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما عينان تجريان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما من كل فاكهة زوجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان متكئين على فرش بطائنها من استبرق وجنى الجنتين دان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهن قاصرات الطرف لم يطمثهن إنس قبلهم ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان كأنهن الياقوت والمرجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان ومن دونهما جنتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان مدهامتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما عينان نضاختان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما فاكهة ونخل ورمان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهن خيرات حسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان حور مقصورات في الخيام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان لم يطمثهن إنس قبلهم ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان متكئين على رفرف خضر وعبقري حسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان تبارك اسم ربك ذي الجلال والإكرام أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان رب المشرقين ورب المغربين فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان
يا من هو الله الذي لا إله إلا الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر الخالق